Hey guys, Groen here, and today we're going to be discussing, why Blizzard are a bit of a letdown when it comes to your needs. I'd say they just don't care about them, to be honest. It sounds harsh, but they just don't. And so we're going to go into it, we're going to work it out. This is coming from game psychology, game design, understanding and taking that and then extrapolating it through. And I would go as far as to say that I don't think there's a game psychologist that works for Blizzard, and I also don't think their designers know or understand any of it at all. And you can see that in some of the decisions they make in just general. It could be that the upper management are refusing to, but I mean, it would be a bit of well, what's the point of having the game psychologist if you're not going to listen to them? Sort of back and forth. So, we can look into it. And I'll explain through and just give you the basics and then just extrapolate and you'll see exactly what I'm referencing. Okay, so the whole premise of this video is to discuss a well-known topic within psychology, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in video games, there's three main chunks that that video games can give to you. So it's to fulfill your needs. So this is why you would say that you play video games for. And this is why it's important for your mental health. So this is why when you play games, you're fulfilling parts of in your mental health. Specific ones do specific things, but video games are uniquely positioned in a way that they're normally ease of use that allows you to fulfill some of these things that normally would be harder to fulfill, especially in stuff like your day job, especially if you've got a monotonous job and and it's just low skill work. It's you can feel depressed just by going to work, even though it could be really good pay. But so Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts off at the base with your primal needs. This is stuff that people will agree with you on, which is stuff that you definitely need, which is food, water, oxygen, things to allow your body to live. So obviously the bottom tier isn't something that really video games can really do for you. There's no way that you playing video games makes you less hungry. You still need to eat. They don't really focus on any of it. The second tier is safety and security and stuff like that. So it's having a roof over your head, not being worried about somebody coming and attacking you, those sort of things. So obviously once you can breathe, you've got enough food in your body to give you energy, water in your body to just exist, basically, all of those base needs. Then it's you're worried about whether you're safe or not, and whether you're not at risk of dying, basically, from an attacker or something like that. So that's your next need. So obviously if you're struggling for oxygen, then that comes higher priority. If you've got no food in your belly, then it comes at a higher priority than your safety, because obviously if you are hungry and you're going to die if you don't fight something, you'll fight something and at risk of your own life. So that's how you can easily see the scaling on it, but essentially those two are mostly irrelevant for video games. So the third tier for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is where video games heavily comes into, and this is the top three are golden for video games. If you're a games designer or you understand any game psychology or how players should interact within game worlds, you can just look to these 3 points and go, okay, I understand it, and this is why a player plays our game, this is why a player would get their needs fulfilled. You can create happy players by just following these things and encouraging them through gameplay and your game's design. And this is my core point to why I think that Blizzard just don't care about the players, and they're more focusing on other techniques which aren't so good for your mental health. So the third tier is about social interaction and friendship. So this is something that you could easily look at as guilds, parties, encouragement to group up and stuff like that. And Blizzard have actually, over the course of the game and the games design they've done, had stuff that was really core to the system, and it's reasons why people, you could say, are playing Classic more than they're playing Retail, or have played Classic more. And Retail they almost feel like two different games, even though they're meant to be done by the same designers and stuff like that. And obviously you can see where we're going with this when I start to explain that you used to have to group up to kill quest mobs because there weren't enough. So people would see other people that are the same faction as them, and they'd invite them to a group so that they could play together. And then that allowed them to complete that quest. And then you'd be like, well, we're going to carry on playing together. There's some more quests to do. We'll keep going. And then you'd be like, get to the end of your session, you're about to go off to have your tea, and you'd be like, hey, I'll add you, and then if I'm on at the same time, we'll play together because we're about the same level. And then you become friends long term, but you have a social interaction, and that's one of your needs. So your social interaction need is there. So they had a natural system that was actually built for, because the servers would struggle if you had too many mobs on and stuff like that. So they had that as a problem. Their solution to having the server struggling was to reduce the number of spawns for mobs, and then what actually ended up happening was social benefit. So you end up with these systems that they thought they was fixing a problem when actually they was probably making it worse. So they took it away, and for other benefits, like I said, it's like faster respawn meant you could actually do the quests faster, and you didn't need to group up. But needing to group up would mean that other people that wouldn't normally group up would group up with somebody, get their needs met, and then come back to playing the game more. So you can see subscriber numbers go down as these effects like play out. And you also, the other main point to this for friendships and stuff, like their lack of focus on it going down, was the looking for group system. So you used to have to make friends with players. You used to add on your friends list, like, this person's good at DPS, this person's a good tank, this person's a good healer, in your notes against a person's name, so that you would remember who they were. And then when you go and do a dungeon, you would invite them to come with you, and you'd have people in your guild that would obviously you'd focus on as your main setup, but then you'd also have people that's outside of your guild, and you would play with them over and over again to gain these points to upgrade your gear, basically. And so the system was built in, so you would have conversations with them. You'd get on Skype together back in Wrath of the Lich King days, and it would be Discord if it was the same today, and you'd chat to them and have those conversations and realise that you're growing a relationship with them. And sometimes they would join your guild and you'd raid together because you've done dungeons with them. It's like, oh, I know a really good tank actually, and our tank's just left playing the game, so we'll invite this tank to come play with us, who you knew from dungeons, you met doing a random dungeon just trying to find a tank, and all that come from naturally talking to people. But nowadays, you just go and see you're looking for group, and you'll go, there's a group there, let's just say, can I join your group? And then they go yes, and that's the end of it, and you don't have any conversations at all. And then you just do the whole dungeon. Sometimes you say at the end, like, thanks for the run or something like that, and that's it. It doesn't matter to most people. They're just like, I'm just playing with whoever turns up. And you can see clearly there's a problem there, because there's no encouragement to play together. So there was just some solutions they tried to put in. So at some point they had, in Wrath of the Lich King, they had awareness that this could be a problem, and they tried to resolve it. And you can see, obviously, after Wrath of the Lich King, like, subscriber numbers went down for Cataclysm, and it, some of it would be basic stuff for reasons why people didn't want to play. They actually, a lot of guilds fell apart, and a lot of playing together fell apart after they made some of these changes. But the main one was that you used to have a system in the game that they put in where if you played with, if you leveled within a guild or anything like that, whenever you killed mobs and you looted money, it would gain to the guild. And so it made guild leaders encouraged to invite people in, and there is some exploitation going on where people would just set up a guild, invite as many people as possible to try and take money out of the guild bank, so they would just use that as a way of gaining money, and then players would just be playing in there but they wouldn't talk to each other. And so the system was a really good idea to encourage people to be in guilds, because you get an XP buff, you get like guild bank purchase stuff, just general benefits for being in a guild, and then they removed it. And so the problem there was the exploitation, but they just removed the whole system. So this is like, I can see that you've damaged your toenail there, so what we'll do is we'll cut the leg off. It's really bad games design. There's plenty of solutions. My advice to Blizzard right now would be, and they could do this within, you could probably set an engineer to do this within a few hours, and I'm just using my games programming background to know that, but obviously you need to know the system. But the main one would be, you're sat in there and you've got this group up of guild members, so a party of guild members, and then if you're in a party with guild members, you gain an XP buff, and let's say it's like 20%, and then just increase all of the mobs currently up to 20% more XP than they have currently, just for when you go into Shadowlands. Players wouldn't know, but what you would end up with is you're in a guild is faster leveling, and that encourages you to ask your guildies to play with you or get people to join a guild so that they can play with you. Also, you could want to start a guild just so you can level faster. And you could also do the same with increasing the amount of gold as well, because it only would be if you're in a group with guildies would you gain gold faster. So you get more you get 10% more gold if you're in a group with guildies. And then it's just like, does the guild benefit from this? No, but they do benefit from more players being in there, but there's no like guild tax or anything like that. That would be gone, so you don't have that problem. You could like allow people to put money into the guild or encourage them to by talking to them, but the players would be the individuals would be the one who benefits from it, not some person who's just a mass inviting everyone. So hopefully that makes some sense. Like, there's a natural need for players to play together. It's within your needs, like scientifically proven. It's like stuff that you'll look for after you've gained the benefits of security, and you've gained your base needs met. You'll start to look for friendships, and so encouraging that and creating scenarios that will naturally make people want to play with each other. Because obviously you're going to end up with some people that are, it's a video game, and there's going to be a lot of people that aren't socially interactive in general, and they're going to feel like almost guilty for asking somebody to play with them sometimes, even though they want to play with other people. And so you want to encourage that. And so they've always feel like they've got a reason to play with somebody, because it doesn't feel natural sometimes to just say, hey, do you want to level together? It's like, you have to go out your way to ask that question. Whereas if it's like, do you want to level together so that we can gain this experience buff? And they're like, yeah, well, I want the experience buff, so yeah, let's level together. Easy for players to just interact and have that conversation, because there's side benefits, and then they would be getting their needs met by the game, which would encourage them to keep playing the game, because it'll feel like, I want to get on and play with my friend, so I've got some leveling to do, I'm going to go and do that with my friend. It feels more like a hobby than it does just something that you do in your free time, which is like two distinct bits in your brain. But yeah, so you'd gain some benefits there quite easily, and would help players a lot. Okay, so the second from top tier of your needs, so obviously these go from bottom to top, if that wasn't clear earlier, and it's around stuff like achievements. You could see it easily in the achievement system, but there is other like base values and understandings, but it's like prestige and feeling as though you've earned something and gained the respect of your like equals and stuff like that. So you've got stuff like, you used to have systems that existed where you would have you would see somebody that's got really good PvP gear on. They've got 2200 rating, and they've got like a really cool sword, because you didn't have transmog to overwrite that. Now transmog helps with the top tier, but basically self-actualization is the top tier. And so obviously the ones below it are, you would want more, so these are your needs that you'd want to be fulfilling more. And so once you've met all of the ones below, you'll look to get the one at the top. So this makes sense. So transmog's good in some ways and bad in others, because it took away from some stuff. But you could put these sort of systems back in the game quite easily. Achievements do so much, but most of the achievements don't feel like they're worth anything. It doesn't feel like I'm going to brag about some sort of achievement. Like, there's stuff like somebody said, oh yeah, but it's really cool to complete achievements. I'm like, some achievements, yes. Some achievements are like almost bragging rights, but some achievements just are a waste of time. Like, oh, I completed this dungeon. It doesn't feel hard to complete a dungeon. Most people complete a dungeon. It's like, nobody goes and celebrates going down the shops unless they've got problems to make it so it's hard to go down the shops. So it's not something to celebrate. It's like celebrating, an adult going to the toilet. It doesn't make sense, but celebrating a young child going to the toilet is something that would happen if it's their first time going on the potty. Yeah, we're gonna clap and cheer maybe, but once you're an adult, it kind of a waste of time. And the same sort of thing with dungeons. Everyone can do a dungeon, so that's not a thing to celebrate anymore. Maybe the first person to clear the dungeon ever, yeah, we'd celebrate that, but no, it's just not the case. So celebration of achievements, not really a thing for most of the time. There's certain achievements, like completing all achievements, that's seen as a big deal, or getting all of the amounts that exist in the game, that's a big deal, but most of the other ones are relevant. High arena rating, high mythic keys, like cleared, is kind of nearly there. There's not enough like showing off. There's no cool stuff, so I'd recommend stuff like having to get a certain arena tier to be able to go in a certain place in World of Warcraft. That would be cool. Tabards that show that you've got a certain rating. Maybe a little buff that shows that you've recently beaten a 2200 rating, or recently cleared a mythic 15, 20 or whatever, and it's just a little buff icon that appears, and it's like not a dispellable icon, but it's just one that appears as a buff. So if you see somebody with it, maybe you could have some cool effect that appears on somebody when they're like not in combat. So it's just like they glow or something like that, and then so you can just go over to them. You could maybe even allow it to be turned off, but other players can look at it and go, wow, that's really cool that you did this, let's have a conversation about it, how did you do that? And if they get to the point where they're asking that question, how did you do that, not normally a really good show and tell of like that it's working. That's what players are, something to look up to, which means that they respect the player, and then the player feels respect. And this is something that's like earned by doing hard work. Normally you can't just give somebody it. So that's like the same reason why a really cool transmog that took ages with loads of different parts might look really cool compared to somebody who just bought one from the player store. It's just nobody's going to really care so much. They're going to be like, well, you just bought it, it didn't take you loads of effort, it's not really cool. The same as when somebody just has all of the same set. Asmongold says stuff like this all the time. It's like, oh, all of the pieces are the same is crap. And it's like, well, yeah, because there's no effort gone into it. Wasn't hard work that you looked for these pieces or tried to find them or earned them. You just got the default set that already exists and just turned it on. It's not as good. So the same sort of setup. You want to watch that mentality, and it's got to be something. How did you do that? Where did you do that? How did you get this? When you're asking those questions, that's showing that you respect the player and that you want to be more like that player, which shows that there's achievement and it's prestige within doing that thing, and so that's really cool. So the final piece of the puzzle is self-actualization. So there's quite a few different parts to this, but most of it you could see around like self-respect of, and like your creativity and those sorts of parts where it's like you've unlocking your mind. It's like, obviously it's the final tier, like something that is seen as people need, and there's a lots of parts of the game that could have better influence of this, and it's just missed off the mark. Like old talent system is way more towards this, and the new talent system is kind of irrelevant. Glyphs, really good bonus into this. Current Azurite system, irrelevant for this. It's like, because there's no creativity in it. Like the glyph system used to be, I'm going to be creative with my choices and to allow myself to play the game and come up with new ideas of how I could do it. That's really important. Like the choices around transmog, really, really important for like, I'm going to be really creative, come up with this cool combo, and that's going to almost unlock myself. Like I feel like I've done something really cool there. And that's normally like how you can work out whether something you could say is giving you self-actualization. It's like, I've done something really cool there, being creative, done something that nobody else has done before, or, which is really weird, but this is how people's brains work, if they see something that they don't think others have done very often, they will also look to do it. So this is why Rextroy video might do really well, because they can watch somebody else do it, and it's almost like they're doing it. And this is part of like how a brain functions, where you have this part of your brain that allows you to have what are known as mirror neurons. So you watch somebody else do something, and then you feel like you're doing it. It's the same sort of sense where you could see somebody else eat, and then you get hungry. This works throughout everything, but when you watch somebody play video games, and they do something cool, you'll feel like doing that cool thing. So you might watch Rextroy one-shot someone and go, I want to do that one-shot, can I do it? Have I got the characters? Have I got the gear? Etc. to go and replicate this one-shot. And then you could go and do it, and it'll be really cool. And you would feel creative, and you can go and show your buddies, oh, look at this cool one-shot thing I did. Here's a video of it. Or, you take them with you, watch me do this one-shot. It'd be really cool. Something to like almost brag about. And that's another way you can look at it. It's like, if it's something worth bragging about, normally there's a lot of creativity, or there's a lot of like respect from other people. Normally you're expecting respect almost. So one of the other parts of self-actualization is problem solving, and it's like a key part, but there's a lot of like lack of problem solving within World of Warcraft. And so the creativity and the problem solving like hit two really big points for me, which is the current talent tree system, and also the new system that we're going into. And some parts of the new system we're going into in Shadowlands is kind of there a little bit, but you not being able to swap whenever you want to, is just like, well, how can I be creative with it? I'm creative once at the beginning of the expansion. I can't even think about it after I've done that because it's already locked in. So there's no point in thinking about it anymore. So you get to be creative one time instead of infinite times you could sit down and look at it. Infinite times. Even if you just limited it to once a week, it's still bad because you've got, instead of infinite, it's once a week. So this is just almost irrelevant. Just don't bother putting in the system, and players would probably feel better if you just gave other talent options. So instead of 3, you just go to 4, and you could say, well, how are they going to balance 4? They currently don't balance any of them. So there's, in PvE, there's normally 1 cookie cutter thing, 2 on each line if you're lucky. But most of them, there's 1 that you take every time, and then sometimes there's 1 that once you've got enough gear that you take, but the majority of the time you just don't. But that's because they're all built around damage, which is something that is built into players to want to do the most damage. So you're always going to tick it, even if it's horrible to do. Most players will tick it and just figure out how to do it. Just put in more options, and then if something's overpowered, you can nerf it because there's other options. And also, if you don't make it around damage, and damage is just something you do, and then you've got, maybe you could put 1 line in about damage, like a different way of doing damage so that you can change how the player plays. But stuff like, give different options, like more of something that a player already has. So if you can just put, right, you've got an option of an extra charge, an extra heroic leap, or an extra intercept as options. There's different benefits for each, but it's quite clear that they've got an option of 1 of each. And you could go, well, I want to take heroic leap because it goes further. I want to take charge because I want the rage. I want to take intercept because I need to be able to get to my teammate for X, Y, Z reason. Maybe it's the case that they need to have it on a 30-second cooldown because they're against hunters who are going to trap their teammates, so they need to use it every time. And so at the moment it's a minute, and now it's 30 seconds. Something like that. Obviously, I don't know the current numbers on intercept and ice trap, and you could have the same in PvE. Maybe it's the case that your teammate is really fast at moving and you're not, so you can use, if you've got 2 intercepts, you can just intercept to them twice to get to where you need to go so you don't die. But if you can't heroic leap that in that area because there's too many corners or something like that, so there's no point in taking heroic leap and there's no mobs to charge to. So you've got the option to pick, but you're creative, coming up with an idea when to use it. So I think if it was me, I would allow, once you're not in combat, you can use an item that is instantly replenishable. There's no you don't use it and it vanishes. It's just like almost like a Hearthstone. It just goes on cooldown for 30 seconds, and it will let you change any talent. And why I would be doing that is so that you can be creative in each pull, even in an instance, or each boss in an instance, you can swap to a new talent. And I would just try to avoid any damage based stuff. So it might be the case that in something there might be Ring of Peace might be really good, or you could be using a completely different talent. And so it's like, oh, do I use this, do I use that? Is is Blizzard good here or Flamestrike good here? I've got these as my options to pick, and it might be the case you use Flamestrike because you want to get a dot on them because you're not going to be able to attack them because you need to move too much. But maybe a Blizzard would be better in a different scenario because you want them to be slowed down. But you've got options to pick. Obviously, creating these systems will take time because you need to add on a whole new tier. But that's how I would do it. I'd focus less on damage and more on mechanics, and put in them in as options. And like I said, players can pick which one they want. And if one's crap, it doesn't matter because there's already crap ones. So if you've just got more options, if something's overpowered, you can nerf it, and you've still got 4 other ones to pick from. If we're at 5 options for a talent, so we've still got 4 other ones to pick from. So just pick one of them. And so if anything's overpowered for any reason, you can just nerf it, and then later on you could look to rework it and buff it again. If you end up with, out of 5, you've got 4 of them, and all 5 are crap, and nobody's really happy with any of them, they're moaning about all of them, then you need to be looking at, that's time to do a rework on it, on that tier. Just rework the tier. You've not been doing a good job at it. But it's obvious then. But if you've got 3, it's like, well, we haven't got time to do it. But if you've got to the point where you're at 5 that nobody wants to pick between 5, then that's clear. That's shining light on it. So the other thing I want to bring to the forefront is that when you look at players, the people who are at this stage where they're focused on stuff like talent and stuff like that is normally that their needs are met either out of game or within the game in some form. So the people who care about this stuff more are normally in a guild and they're focused on high end content. And so when it comes to these as options, it should still be focused. For some reason, Blizzard has this idea that this isn't important to give more options that are actually you can change whenever you want and stuff like that. It's like they want to stick you in down on a road, and that to me says that the psychology of the designers are they're stuck. They haven't got everything covered on their own set of this scale. So I want you to think back through the steps like the security and the food and stuff like that. I feel like that they're feeling stressed about those things in their life. They don't feel like they spend enough time with their friends and stuff like that, and then that is causing them stress, and so they're not able, or it's just too much. I can't think of the word, but it's just too much for them to be able to deal with the situations that they're in, to be able to get to the point where they feel as though they can be focusing on those parts of content, and it doesn't feel as though it's needed. It's just like, what's the point? And the point is that there's players that have most of their life sorted, and they, maybe you do need to be focusing on the social aspects more, and maybe you do need to be focusing on the achievements and feeling prestige within the game. Those two things, achievements doesn't feel like it's getting focused on at all, and also the creativity at all, and some social stuff they haven't gets ticked off quite well by Blizzard at times, but other times it's just irrelevant. And so I want you to think about the designer's point of view. I feel like that they're struggling. If they are playing the game, they can't even think about a lot of the stuff that they're getting their needs met from, or thinking about other people getting their needs met, because their own needs physically, mentally, so their social stuff and their physical, food, water, a bed to sleep in and stuff like that, it must be under jeopardy or struggling with. And I think that that's causing effects in the game that's made since Wrath of the Lich King is going downhill. That's around the time that Activision bought the game out, so maybe there's a case that they restricted funding or not let it be flexible enough for them to be able to pull off the stuff they wanted to, because that could easily be putting strain on it. Also, it's quite expensive to live in Irvine as far as I'm aware, and that's where most of the designers work. So these things might all be adding up and making problems. I feel for the designers, and like I said, I don't feel like there's a game psychologist there, because they'd be telling them about just the general concepts, which you'd obviously need to learn a lot of before you'd be able to go and do at uni or college the stuff. So I want to use this as a way of looking back across all of the stuff that they're doing, and I would say that I think that they're struggling at the moment mentally, and that's why it's harder for them to see that this stuff is important, because it's almost like I've just got to do this as part of my job, whereas like normally you'd be thinking, oh, what cool stuff we could put in, how could we help players, how could we get people's needs met within the game of World of Warcraft, which is good for the people who are playing the game, because otherwise it's just you hitting a dopamine tick box for them, and trying to get them addicted to the game, and that's not actually healthy. Normally when people make games, they tick boxes for you. They would be ticking these things on your needs list and then hooking them to dopamine, so it's actually like, well, I'm going to get the dopamine from it and I'm going to gain these benefits from my mental health. Remove it and it's gone, and it's just not very good. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, just maybe tweet Blizzard, maybe just message them, get them to watch it, and maybe we can get some of this stuff fixed. Like, some of it wouldn't take long, some of it could take ages, but maybe next expansion they can look at it. Maybe they can use this as a reference to think about how they're building the game and what they're focusing on, because I don't feel like that they have a plan. This is a good idea. Why is it a good idea? They don't know. They can't explain anything. They're not really explaining much at all, which is really bad from a psychology, from a player's point of view, which I wish they would focus on. I've been doing this for quite some time now, so I hope that they start to think about it more. Maybe they hire in some people. If they, like I said, if they want help, every time they can just message me. I can talk to them. I can go through whatever points they want. I can extrapolate the information and work out what a player would be thinking most likely, and go from there to actually make a better game, because obviously they're not making it for themselves. As you know, they make it for the player, and so they make it for you guys. So if you go and hit them up, just message them, see what we can do. Maybe we can make a better game together. There's some stuff that players don't know why it's going to be a bad thing for them. Like, they're not going to cut how much XP that you gain in half, because it's just not going to feel rewarding to level. They're not going to give you more gear because it's not going to feel rewarding to gain that gear. So you'd want better gear and like stronger gear, and then make it harder. So there's some balance in all of this, that Blizzard needs to get right. Those are the things that players normally ask for, and it isn't actually any good for them. But more options of how to play the game is always really good. Being encouraged to play with your friends and be in parties with your friends, really good for you. So these sort of things, having something to look up to and work on, really good for you, and those are all your needs. So hopefully this helps, and like I said, hit up Blizzard, see what they say. That's it from me, and I will see you all soon. Bye bye.